Joining us now, as promised, the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign. His new book, How Bernie Won. Jeff Weaver joins us now. Jeff, good morning. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. We just read Trump's latest tweets in the morning. Do you engage in that? Do you read Trump's tweets every morning? Or what do you do?
I I generally do. I try not to run my life by it, in large part because that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to set the agenda with these tweets. He is the president of the United States. We do have to pay attention to what he says, and generally what he says is outrageous and offensive in many cases. But I hate to organize my life around it.
Yeah.
This is a matter of resistance.
Right, no question about it. In your book, I believe you assert that you believe Bernie could have beaten Donald Trump. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. In fact, all the polling throughout 2015 and 2016 was consistent, both against Trump and against all the other Republicans, that Bernie would have won. And in fact, one of Trump's posters a couple of months ago publicly said that he believed that Bernie would have beaten Trump as well.
So, Jeff, knowing what we now know about the Russia investigation, though, and Russia's involvement, what would have been, if he had won the nomination, would you have been prepared, or would have been your strategy to prevent what Russia was doing? I mean, do you doubt that Russia would have done the same thing to Bernie that they did to Hillary?
Oh, I have no doubt that they would have done the same thing. Their job is to sow mischief and to try to upset politics in America. As you know, it wasn't just presidential politics. They were trying to sow mischief on a number of levels, including with social movements. So I have no doubt that they would have done that. I think my point would be is that Senator Sanders, I think, had a connection with working class voters of all races, I think, which was fundamentally different than Secretary Clinton's. And I think that he would have been less vulnerable to those types of attacks.
Okay, so from okay, I see what you're saying, but let me ask you this: do you have reason to believe that Russia did anything on social media, because obviously their biggest enemy was Hillary Clinton, to advantage your campaign, Bernie's campaign, and disadvantage hers?
Well, I don't know. We don't know yet all that Russia did during the course of the campaign. We certainly saw no evidence of it during the campaign, and no one has pointed to anything specific that went on in that regard. So it's impossible to say right now, what they did or did not do. There were also, some shenanigans on the Republican side in the Republican primary as well. So it's like I said, it's really impossible to know at this point.
What about the primary process itself? You believe the primary was stolen from Bernie?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was stolen from Bernie. I don't think that because that implies that had things been done in a fair way, that he would have won. And I don't think we can know that question either, right? I mean, the answer to that question either, without a time machine and being able to write what was done. But clearly, Bernie Sanders had to run in a process that was not balanced and fair. Clearly, the DNC had its finger on the scale, or certainly Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the chair of the DNC, had a finger on the scale in favor of the secretary. That included, the debate schedule. There were some joint fundraising agreements. Donna Brazile herself pointed out that when she became DNC chair after Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that she found a contract that had the Clinton campaign in charge of the DNC as early as the summer of 2015. So it's difficult to say that the process was a fair and open process.
Jeff Weaver, folks, with us. His new book, How Bernie Won. You advocate Bernie running again in 2020, don't you?
I do, yes, quite strongly, as a matter of fact. I think given this moment in history and the terrible challenge that we are facing with this horrendous administration, that we need the strongest candidate who can put together, what I call the FDR coalition together, so that we can defeat Trump. And I do believe that Bernie Sanders is the strongest candidate, and I'd say that based on his not only on his performance in 2016, but also his ability to motivate and bring out a lot of young people of all races. He won the millennial vote of all races during the course of the 2016 race. But also, as you have seen, all across this country, you have candidates who are running on exactly the platform that he articulated. Whether or not they identify with him, they are certainly talking about the issues that he talked about: Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, criminal justice reform, immigration reform. These are all issues that he talked about during the campaign, and they are now in the mainstream.
Has Bernie discussed 2020 with you? Has he let you know, indicated to you that he intends to run?
He has not. Right now, he is looking at it. He has not decided to run. He has not decided not to run. I certainly have had many conversations with him about many topics. I typically don't talk about those in public, but he is an active consideration, I think.
So if he does make that decision, will you again run his campaign?
I don't know the answer to that question either. We haven't had that discussion.
Okay.
But I would do whatever he would want me to do, whatever will be best for the cause.
So, Jeff Weaver with us, folks, How Bernie Won, 24 minutes past the hour. If he were to run, and if you were to run the campaign again, Jeff, is there anything you would do differently from what you did in 2016?
Oh, absolutely. a million things I would do differently.
Probably don't have no time, do we, huh? Right, okay.
right. This would be a three-day show. But, like anybody who's worked on a political campaign, there are always things that you would want to do over if you possibly could. And, one of the things that was impossible to know last time was the extent to which people at the grassroots would support the campaign financially. And we ended up raising over $230 million, largely from small contributions averaging $27. But there was no way at the beginning of the campaign to know that was going to be the case. And so we ran a very, very small campaign. I mean, 2 months after the campaign was announced, we only had 28 people nationwide. And so once it became clear that we were going to have money, we rapidly expanded the campaign, and that created a lot of organizational stress that I would think one would want to avoid next time.
Right, and you all, in other words, you all weren't as prepared for the response and the magnitude that it became.
No, I mean, we hired 1,000 people in over 90 days at one point. So in order to bulk up the campaign, that's a daunting task.
Jeff, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, because there's a lot of concern too about the way the campaign handled the African American electorate. I know those concerns are out there. Would you handle that differently? There were concerns that it was somewhat neglected, and even, some of the misstatements of the campaign that the Southern primaries don't really matter and don't mean anything. Would you address those types of issues and those types of concerns differently the second time around?
Yes, absolutely. I think in fact, the book talks a lot about the role that race played in the campaign, and it was extremely important to the narrative of the campaign. And one of the things the book tries to do is clear, in the heat of a political campaign, it benefits candidates and others to create narratives that then become implanted in the public consciousness. And the whole issue of how race played out in the campaign was extremely, extremely important. I don't think that most people know that Bernie won the African American millennial vote. I don't think that people know that as early as Michigan, which was March 8th, he was winning African Americans under 40. In Pennsylvania, which was near the end of the campaign, we lost Pennsylvania. That was the week after New York, but we lost among African American voters by less than we lost the state overall. And there was an incredible attempt to whitewash our campaign that went on throughout. So much so that young supporters of color, young people of color who were supporting Bernie, started a Twitter hashtag called Bernie Made Me White. And there was incredible anger on their part about their identity, their existence being written out of the entire story. And it was very frustrating for them, very frustrating for us. I remember, Nevada was the third state in the process, and our campaign won the Latino vote there. And Hillary Clinton's campaign, which had described it as part of her racial firewall, suddenly started talking about it as a white state. So there was an incredible amount of, as I said, discussion about race in the campaign. It was an important narrative, and I think at times, our outreach to the African American community was not as good as it should have been. I will say this, that we had 24 people whose responsibility was reaching out to the African American community. It was the largest constituency-based outreach arm of the campaign. Could we have done better? Absolutely. And I think if we do this again, I think you will find that it will be done better.
Jeff Weaver with us, folks. The book entitled How Bernie Won. Bernie was on Meet the Press yesterday talking about establishment candidates versus progressive candidates. I believe you articulate in the book one of the ways in which he won is that a lot of the policy discussions, the dialogue has changed around certain issues. They've become more progressive conversations, and there have been even more progressive candidates coming forward as well, correct?
Absolutely correct. And that's true all over the country.
Yeah.
And that's the sense in which you won, right?
Of course.
He changed the national debate, and that's an enduring contribution to the American political process.
I just saw a tweet this morning. Somebody tweeted in reaction to your book, why won't Bernie go ahead and register as a Democrat?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Vermont, like many other states, doesn't have party registration, so nobody in Vermont is a registered Democrat. That's true of people in Virginia and Texas and a whole bunch of other places. So, Bernie Sanders has received the endorsement of the Democratic Party in both of his last runs for the U.S. Senate. He's part of the Senate Democratic leadership. He contributes to what we call the coordinated campaign in Vermont, which is the program that's run in each state to help Democrats get elected. He contributes and participates in that. And over the last couple of years, he has raised and given to down ballot Democrats well in excess of $5 million. So, he plays a powerful role in the Democratic Party. He, as you know, got 43% of the vote in the presidential primaries. So he is a leader in the Democratic Party. But I think also he is an important bridge between Democrats and what I would call democratically aligned independents. His support among independent voters is very strong. In fact, during the primaries in states that allowed independents to participate in the Democratic primary, he won those voters 3 or 4 to 1 over Secretary Clinton. And that's an important indicator of we were talking earlier about would Bernie have beaten Trump. Being able to win those independent voters is an important indicator of general election strength when you're in the primaries. And there just are not enough Democrats or Republicans for either one to win without the independent voter. And Senator Sanders is very strong with independent voters. Interestingly, if you look at some Pew research from a couple of years ago, among millennials, the demographic group with the highest percentage of democratically aligned independents is African American voters. And as you may know, there is a big push to open up the Democratic primaries in places where they do not allow independents to participate. There's a big push to open those up to allow independents to participate, and that would greatly benefit young people, and particularly young people of color.
Do you think that, just curious on the issue of primaries, and that's an interesting idea, do you think that they should be open enough, though, so that even Republicans can vote in Democratic primaries. Do you think that's a good idea? I know
No,
it
you don't
happens
need that.
already in some states, but should that continue?
Right, it does happen in some states, and I don't see any needs that we have to have Republicans voting in our primary. But I
Right,
would
right.
say, there's often a fear expressed that somehow there's going to be a lot of crossover voting. And I grew up in Vermont and I've lived in Virginia, neither of which have party registration, and both which allow you to, when you go to the polls, to pick which ballot primary you want to vote in. And I have never seen any kind of organized, sustained, effort to cross over from one to the other to create mischief. I know some folks have pointed to a couple of local races in various places where they feel like that might have happened, but it's very difficult to do that on any kind of scale. So no, I'm talking about what I would call independent,
Sure,
or some
no.
places are called non-aligned voters. But we don't need Republicans voting necessarily.
No. So, I asked you, Jeff, before we go, I asked you if you and Bernie have discussed this or him running in 2020. I guess what I should ask you is if you are bringing it up with him, are you pushing him? Are you encouraging him? Hey, man, what's up? We got to make a move. Because I know you're a campaign organizer. I've been one myself. There's a timetable. If
Yeah.
you said to me, Mark, let's start talking about this. I mean, we're a little bit late almost, so we need to start getting it together. So, are you calling him saying, "Hey, man, dude, we got to make a decision"?
Well, I am not shy in my advocacy for him running
Okay.
again. I don't think it's a big spoiler because I don't think there's any mystery in the book that how Bernie won. But the last three words of the book are "Run, Bernie, Run." So I talk with him every day, and I think he's pretty clear on where I stand.
But you're not. Are you in the process at all of putting anything together in case he calls you after we get off the air this morning and says, "Hey, let's do this"? Are you beginning to make calls? And because I know how it is, man, you gotta strike
Yes,
at this
sir.
kind of stuff. You can't. And like you said, you all got kind of blindsided about what happened before, so you don't want to do that again.
Exactly. Well, look, one of the benefits that we have is, we have residual organizations in every state in the country. I hear from those folks all the time about how they would love to be involved in another go round. And we do have some senior staff, although I would like to see obviously you want to bring in some new people as well to bring new perspectives into the campaign. But I do what I can. Let's just put it that way in terms of keeping the door open.
Do you think, Jeff Weaver, that Hillary Clinton lost for the reasons she said because of Russia? And honestly, she believes also because of the Comey statement 11 days out. Do you think without that, she herself would have bested Donald Trump?
Well, that's, again, that's like saying, would Bernie have won if the process had been fair?
Right.
That's impossible to know. I will say this, that it is outrageous and should never again be the case that a candidate for president has to run against a foreign intelligence service. I think that is an outrage and really an affront to our democracy.
Yeah. Frankly, it's also, as we hear more about this confidential informant, which I don't have a problem with, how Comey could announce an investigation of her and yet keep secret an investigation of Trump. Again, if it's fair, you say, okay, we both of them under investigation and let the public decide. If you're going to say that, just also, Jeff, I don't know if I think if I had a confidential informant, we would just say, well, we hope that the process shows we're not guilty of anything. When you start attacking a confidential informant, I think that implies a level of guilt to me.
Well, no, look, there is so much shadiness over there. Over there, I mean, at the White House. And it's the Russia thing is part of it. Obviously, the business dealings are crazy. Secretary Clinton was attacked over and over again about the Clinton Foundation or about alleged things of the Clinton Foundation. I mean, those Trump business dealings. Anybody peels back that onion, looks like they're going to find quite a bit over there. Not only that, but he promised to quote unquote, drain the swamp.
Right.
I was talking about draining the swamp. He's drained the swamp and he's turned it into a cesspool. The corporate America is running the show over there. They're giving money away left and right to their friends. They're bankrupting. We have teachers on strike all over this country, trying to, the teachers who are working 2 and 3 jobs to hold it together in some places because they make so little money.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're giving away billions and billions, hundreds of billions to the wealthiest in this country, and they're abandoning communities all over the place. It's really an outrage.
Yeah, no, it most certainly is, and frankly, that was one of the issues that Bernie ran strongly on, the whole corporate influence and trying to get less of that. Last question, I promise. Is it your intention?
No.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, though, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Is it one of your goals if Bernie agrees to run it, if you manage his campaign? Is it also one of your goals to ensure that Donald Trump keeps Rudolph Giuliani as his spokesperson? Is that something that you? Because I know I would, man. I'd be like, yeah, keep it up, dude.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with him more. He's a blessing in disguise. But I will say this: he fires so many people over there so often. They talk about the leaks over there, and he's all upset about people leaking. But there's no trust over there. He treats everybody like they're disposable.
Right.
So the fact that they don't have a lot of loyalty to him or to each other, not really a big shocker, right?
Right. No, you're right. You're right. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret too, a well-known secret, Jeff. You may or may not be aware. Speaking of the African-American community, Rudy Giuliani organized the Million Man March for us in 1995. He held a press conference at his daily mayoral press conference. He attacked the Million Man March, and he was the most effective organizer we had. And because it was him, with all the stuff he was doing with the police violence here in New York, that made more people come to the march. So if that's foreboding that Giuliani helped us get 2 million men to the Million Man March, he may in fact help us get Trump out. I just want to let you in on that little secret, man. So
I appreciate. It's just between you and me, right?
That's right.
I have no doubt that that's true. He is a very polarizing figure, and I have not understood, just from a professional standpoint, politics aside, from a professional standpoint, what he's been doing in these since he's been back in Trump's good graces. I can't believe they think it's a positive.
Nor do I, like yesterday, he even said that Mueller told him he'd wrap up by September 1st. I don't know why anybody thinks Giuliani's presence would make Mueller let him in on every little secret he has, and then they believe it. Like, oh no, I don't plan to indict the president. Oh, of course, I'll be finished by September 1st. That's what prosecutors tell you. Those of us who haven't been prosecuted know that's what prosecutors tell you. So anyway,
it is ridiculous and just part of their ongoing either dysfunction or disinformation or both.
Indeed. Folks, it's hard to talk about anything without talking about the foolishness coming out of the White House. But I hope we've all gotten something out of this discussion. I hope you have. I'm sure we have. Jeff Weaver's book, How Bernie Won. Check it out. He's actively encouraging Bernie Sanders to run in 2020. We will see what happens. And hopefully, if something does happen, Jeff will call us and we'll be some of the first to know, I hope. How about that?
Happy to do it.
Jeff, good to talk to you, buddy.
Listen, I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been a really great time. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk again soon, okay?
You bet.
All right. Take care, man. Jeff Weaver, How Bernie Won. We'll take a quick break. We'll come right back. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke, get ready for impeachment. This is MIV.